All right, welcome to Cutting into Cybersecurity, show number 15. My name is Joel Bork. I will be your host here today, where we are going to be continuing studying for the CISSP certification. Today, we're continuing domain 2.2, and we're digging into cryptography. Now, last week, somebody got sick, not with COVID, just had a headache, but was unable to attend. Thankfully, he's back with us this week. He is a senior account executive over at Usato. Brandon Krieger, buddy, welcome back.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the pressure, like in the sense of like all the weather coming in. We're right now. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, so we got the cold front that came in, right, and it hit me. I was just like, just like this massive headache, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can make it.
Well, I was laughing not because you were sick or the cold front. You said the pressure of being on this show.
It is. It's tense. It's tense. Studying for the CISSP is so much pressure.
So much pressure. All right. So before we get into the new stuff, though, it normally does the recap from the week before. I think I'm on the hook for it this week, right?
I think so, Joel.
All right. So welcome, guys. Before we kick off, we got a bunch of people on. If you guys will do a hand clap or like the hand with the heart or like a thinking face, whatever it is, it gets your name up there so I can see that you're on. Vivek, buddy, welcome. It sounds like you moved to Austin, Texas with Army Futures Command. So welcome. Glad to have you back. He missed us because he was on the road last week. So glad to have you, buddy. Looks like Dr. Tony was covering down for me. Thank you for covering down while we weren't monitoring chat. Who else do we have? Salome, thank you. Yep, our countdown text and the music was gone. Don't know what happened to it. I'll fix it by next week, I promise. Who else do we have on? Perfect. Got some more. Christine, welcome back. Who else do we have? There's Dr. Tony. Let's see what we got. Awesome. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for the claps. I take them all very personally. I believe Bill is on as well. Who else do we have? Bien Nguyen, thank you for joining us. And we'll have a few more here in a few. So kicking off recap for last week, we jumped into a lot of the historicals, right? So how cryptography came to be, what the beginning of it was. And let me get these up and running. And actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. I'm going to run through these before I do my quiz questions today. So first and foremost, let's talk ROT 3 to ROT 15. Can anybody tell me what ROT stands for? ROT 3. Brandon, do you know what ROT stands for?
Question. No, I actually don't.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and fade this in. It's known as the Caesarean cipher, but it's called ROT 3 because what you do is you rotate the alphabet 3 spaces over. So when you get an A, that's going to be a D. When you get a B, it's going to be an E, right? So this was the one used by Caesar back in the time of Rome. They would use the Caesarean cipher. So that is what ROT is. Now, if you do a ROT 15, you're moving the alphabet 15 characters over. Right? So it just stands for rotate 3, and it's a form of cryptography. So came around, and then we also dug into how we used cryptography in U.S. history. So did you know, Brandon, that we used cryptography in the Civil War?
Yeah, I actually did. I did.
Oh, cool. Yep. When the Union was against the Confederates, they would use the telegraph, right? So the beep, 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 and they would actually have to encrypt that because they knew somebody was monitoring that wire. Rotation cipher. Thank you, Vivek. Appreciate you. We got an early bird question on TAC lane compared to IPsec. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I've never used TAC lane, only IPsec. So Vivek, I'll have to come back to that one at a future date or maybe offline and do some research on my own. And we also aren't covering that in this class. It wasn't in the CISSP content. So I will definitely dig into that though. Next up was cryptography all the way through World War II. So that's the imitation game, right, where we had the breaking of the Enigma machine that encrypted the German communications. So very cool movie there for that. The next up was, we talked about how we're going to protect data in motion, data in use, and data at rest, right? And then we talked about the crypto systems that we were using, right? So we talked about, let me get this concept board, thrown up here. So we talked about cryptography. So this was talking about keyless cryptography, which is your hash functions. Then we talked about secret key cryptography, which is going to encrypt things, assist you in authentication, and then in password hashing as well. Then we talked about public key cryptography, which will assist with encryption, key exchange, and authentication. And then we talked about things that were not cryptography. So if somebody says, I'm encrypting your data by compressing it, the answer is going to be false, or somewhere around that area. And then also encoding is also not encrypting. All right, let's see what else I got for you guys before we move on. We talked about challenge and response authentication protocols. So that would look something like this, where one computer said, hey, I'm Bob. The other guy says, hey, prove it, encrypt this. And then he'll respond with the encrypted apple. And he'll say, hey, Bob, great to talk to you, right? And then you were authenticated via a challenge response protocol. All right, now we're going to talk about symmetric and asymmetric keys again today for a bit. And before I do that, I wanted to talk about Kirchhoff's principle, because they dug into this a lot in this chapter, and I want to repeat it for you guys. So Kirchhoff's principle says basically a method of secret encoding and transmitting information should be secure even if everyone knows how it works. So Brandon, this is basically the open source concept, right? Can it be more secure if everybody knows how it works? Or is it more secure if you keep it safe, right? So in short, he's saying the algorithm should be made public. The only thing that is kept private is the key. So I'm going to fade us back in. What do you think, Brandon?
That's actually a good question, because I mean, when you look at encryption, if it's the key itself, and this is just in my opinion, is as long as you keep the key private, it should be secure. How it's generated, how it's created doesn't matter. It's the key itself that's the security.
But does it though? Let's say, so let's say you're saying how it's made doesn't matter, but what if I take the key and I take the algorithm and those are both hidden from you? You don't know how it works, but all you have is, let's say, a public key to then send information my way, all encrypted. Mm-hmm. You have no idea what the algorithm says. You just have a key. Does that make it more secure if the algorithm's hidden as well?
I guess so, because I mean, then you have to, and I think it's now layers, right? It's defense in depth, right?
Potentially, Kirchhoff's principle says the opposite. He says, even if you hide it, eventually we'll find a problem with it. And if you make it public, that problem will come out sooner and we can move on to something more secure in a more appropriate fashion based on the technologies available, et cetera.
You can resolve it. Okay.
You got it. All right.
What does everyone else think? So we're asking that. So what are you guys on YouTube, LinkedIn, as well as Twitch? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would love to hear it, right? So do you believe if the algo and key are kept secret, is that more secure? Curious to see if anybody has some thoughts on that. So we're a few seconds ahead of you guys, so you guys will hear this in about 10, 15 seconds. So we are going to move on, but please throw your comments in the chat. We want to hear what you guys think about it, and we're going to move on. While you guys do that, I want to throw out a few memes for you. You ready, Brandon?
I'm ready. Let's see what these memes are.
A month into working from home, what day is it? The only reason I know today is Tuesday is because this is on my calendar each and every Tuesday. So thank you guys for joining us every single Tuesday for Cutting into Cybersecurity, where we're studying for the CISSP. My next meme is, I got a job working from home. And yes, while you can see my cool shirt, I do have my pajamas on. So
that's awesome.
I'm sure you guys do too, so that's okay. I can make fun of myself a little for that.
Well, here's the funny thing, and I actually thought, you're doing these live streams, you're kind of doing all that, and you're streaming video conferencing. How many people are actually sitting there in the shorts?
Probably
they might be like, business casual up top, and then relaxed in the bottom, right? Shorts, pajamas, whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot, right? And I think that's just where it is today, which is why it's acceptable that I'm showing this meme today. So had a couple comments real quick. We got Vivek saying, he said, absolutely, in case there might be a flaw in the algo to reverse the keys. Yep. Sarah, welcome, Sarah. She says, I think the algorithm will likely be discovered in either case. Keeping it secret does earn a bit of time in the overall strategy. So, Sarah, the Kirchhoff's principle and kind of the rebuttal for this principle, it says, yes, if there is a flaw in the algorithm, it will be discovered over time. But if there is a flaw, don't you want it to be public so it's discovered sooner, right? If you come up with a new encryption algorithm, make it public so that open source eyes can see it. Even if they're not using it, they could analyze it, test it, and discover those weaknesses, and just the keys should be kept public. But there are people where I'm guessing, Vivek, the TAC lane, he said it's a DoD device that encrypts things. I'm guessing that algorithm is kept private as well. So curious to see if you know, Vivek. But it looks like Salome wears her shorts to work as well. I love it, guys. All right, cool. Salome, last week I had all the questions for you. And right before the show, I had like 10 minutes during the countdown. So I cleaned up my desktop and I put them all in the trash. So nice. I was solo, Brandon. You left me hanging. I didn't have time to throw them back up.
It's all me.
It's all you. But today we're going to throw them up. So, guys, quiz time. So I hope you're all awake. I'm clapping for you right now. So you're going to see this a few seconds before you hear this. But let's go ahead and jump right into these questions. So first up, question number 1. This uses one key to encrypt and decrypt, also called secret key encryption. Some will use an initialization vector. DES, triple DES, AES, two fish, serpent, don't triple any fish, real cold rain. All of these are examples of those. What is this an example of? And guys, use A, B, C, or D for all of these, right? They're all going to be multiple choice. So the first one's going to be A, and that is polyalphabet cipher. The next one is B, asymmetric cipher. Asymmetric encryption, I apologize. C will be Diffie-Hellman, or D will be symmetric encryption. So I'll give you guys just a second to answer that, but I want to know what the answer is. We got Vivek with symmetric up out of the gate quickly. Let's see if we get any other responses real quick. Needless to say, he's going to hear this about 10, 15 seconds, but he is correct. So that is symmetric encryption. And how you remember, it says it uses one key to encrypt and decrypt. Remember, symmetric uses a similar key. It's going to use that same key to encrypt and decrypt. And we're going to go over that again today in more detail with modern encryption. All right, question number 2. Great job, guys. Proud of you. Fading in now. This can be used for encryption, key exchange, and digital signatures. I think Sarah did say B on the last one, which is asymmetric. But how you remember, Sarah, symmetric is the same key for both. Asymmetric, it's going to be a private key and a public key. And we'll get you photos, images, and descriptions of that later in this course. So you won't be able to forget moving forward.
Awesome.
This one this can be used for encryption, for key exchange, and for digital signatures. A, RSA. B, PGP, or pretty good protocol. C is substitution, or D is work factor. What can be used? Salome with RSA. Let's see what we got. Vivek with RSA. And well done, guys. You guys are correct on that. It is RSA. That can be used for encryption, key exchange, and for digital signatures. It's a public key crypto system that is widely used in transmission. It's also one of the oldest. So great job on question number 2. All right. You ready, Brandon? These guys are good. I'm ready. These guys are good. I know. There's not getting much past them. You guys aren't allowed to use Google for this. I'm watching. All right, here we go. Coming in. Combining a key with plain text via XOR, that's how I say it. People say it different ways, but creates a cipher text. Combining a key with a plain text via XOR creates a cipher text. A, monoalphabetic cipher. B, exclusive or XOR. C, working factor. Or D, key clustering. What do you got, Brandon?
I'm going to go with B.
Yeah, and this was a weird one, but the key is the logic, right? So when it says exclusive OR, that's what XOR means. And I'm actually going to tell you and show you how that works because it's far simpler than anybody lets on. Okay, it's just an exclusive OR operator. So I will definitely dig into that today. All right, guys, we got 2 more questions. I promised Salome I'd bring it today with the questions. So we got 5 total, 2 more. This next one seeds the previous encrypted block into the next block to be encrypted. I'm going to repeat that. This seeds the previous encrypted block into the next block to be encrypted. The answers are A, chaining, called feedback in stream mode. B, IDEA, all capitalized, international data encryption algorithm. C, AES, advanced encryption standard. Or D, asymmetric encryption. All right. So while you guys answer that real quick, I'm going to read some notes real quick. You guys all got the last one right, by the way. Notes regarding the earlier question. No need to circle back. Just wanted to provide context. HAPE is based on IPsec with additional restrictions and enhancements, TACLane, high assurance IP encryptor, and depending on the model, a crypto modernization complaint encryptor. Very cool. Thank you, Dr. Tony. All right. I got our first guess for this one is AES. AES. And I think a few more are going to be coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. This one is actually chaining, or called feedback in stream mode. So it seeds the previous encrypted block into the next block to be encrypted. And I'll actually show you an example of that one here today. So great guess. Yep, but Dr. Tony is right. So well done. All right, guys. I know we're at 7:17 already. So let's get this last question in and out of the way. Here we go. This question is really stinking small on my screen. So let me see if I can see it. What is a framework that defines the phases for establishing a secure relationship and support for negotiation of security attributes? It does not establish session keys by itself, and it is used along with the Oakley Session Key Establishment Protocol. Whew, that was a mouthful. But if the question is indicative of the answer, let's see if we can get it. So I got IDEA, I got symmetric encryption for A, I got Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol for B, I got IKE protocol for C, and I have IDEA for D. And I saw Vivek said B on this one, and he is correct. This one is Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. So guys, remember, when you're going through this test, they're talking about they have to make it specific enough so it doesn't relate to anything else. So when you're digging into this, it says it doesn't establish a session, right, by itself, but it's used alongside the Oakley Session Key Establishment Protocol. So you know it's going to be a key management protocol, and that's how you differentiate the two. Whew. All right, baiting us back in, Brandon. How were those questions? Tricky enough?
Good. No, I think they were good. I think, and everyone did well.
Yeah, they did.
So hold on. Maybe they weren't tricky enough.
Uh-oh, guys.
Yeah. Maybe you need to make them harder because they seem to get this pretty easily.
All right, if you guys like the questions, if you want more of the same, give me the claps. If you want more, hit the thumbs up. And if you think you need them harder, give me the thinking face on there. I want to see it. All right. Cool, Brandon. We got to jump into content with modern cryptography. Will you kick us off?
So, and we were talking about that, modern crypto systems usually computerization, complex algorithms, and long cryptographic keys to meet the cryptographic goals of confidentiality. And here we go, the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, authentication, and non-repudiation, which I think is really important, right? That one, right? Yeah. You can't, guess, you can't say it hasn't been done. It's non-repudiated. You
got it. Now, the following sections, guys, we're going to go back a little bit, talk about symmetric key, asymmetric key, really dig into these. I was trying to explain them to Brandon like in depth today on how I talked to you guys about it. He goes, wait a second, you used that picture? He's like, let me get a better picture. So we got better pictures for you this time, and hopefully it makes more sense. And then we're going to dig into all kinds of stuff. So we're going to get started with symmetric key algorithms, and this relies on that shared key. Now, the encryption key that's distributed to all members who participate. So Salome, if I'm going to be using a symmetric key algorithm, I would encrypt my email, send you the key, then we would each have that same shared key or similar key, which is where you get symmetric, right? I would encrypt it with that key. When I send it to you, you would decrypt it. Now, what's the weakness of symmetric keys? Can anybody tell me? Brandon, can you tell me what's the weakness of symmetric keys?
Right. I mean, if anyone gets that key, they get access to the data, right?
You got it. What else?
You lose the key. Right? You lose the key. Right?
Also, how do you scale it?
Well, and that's scalability, right?
Absolutely.
Now you can't, then this is, I mean, the other asymmetric, having a private and public key is scalable, right?
That's it. That's it. So let me show the old graphic. Is that cool, Brandon, real quick? Let
me
show the...
Yeah.
So the symmetric key graphic I showed you guys last week was this one, right? Where on both sides, you see the P stands for plain text, the C stands for ciphertext. So once it comes out of the algorithm, you're going to have ciphertext. And then whether you're encrypting it or decrypting it on the receiver side, you're using that same shared key. Cool?
Makes sense? Yeah.
All right. Do you want to go into... Will you clarify real quick this? Because there is...
Yep.
Yeah. So those two those statements, if you would.
I got this. So when large size keys are used, symmetric encryption is very difficult to break, right? It's primarily employed to perform bulk encryptions and provides only for the security services of confidentiality. Symmetric key cryptography can also be called secret key cryptography and private key cryptography. And then figure 6.3 illustrates this. And then we got a picture that we grabbed that we wanted to kind of show here to really kind of go through that process, right?
Right.
So did you want to put that up or did you have some?
No, I got it for you. I did want to answer Vivek's question. He says, how do you exchange keys in the first place? There's a bunch of ways. I could send you a letter with a key in it, right? I could send you an encrypted email, but a lot of this is known as key management, right? So you can also do things like key wrapping, and there's a bunch of other methods of sending the keys. Fortunately, in the CISSP, they don't focus on how to distribute the keys. Now, when we get to asymmetric key algorithms, most of that's done through CA and key stores. So we'll dig into that a little further here shortly. So let me throw up that graphic. I'm going to let you walk through your graphic. Is that cool?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let me fade that in for you. There you are.
Dr. Tony, lots of ways to exchange keys. Sometimes the key is built in by the manufacturer.
I think mine froze, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh it. I wasn't seeing that comment, but I have your symmetric encryption graphic up if you want to jump into it.
Yeah. So again, when you're looking kind of through the chain of events, right? You're looking at the sender, like me, sending it to Joel. So I have plain text. I have a document that I want to encrypt to make sure Joel is going to get it, but no one else can see it. So then I create that one key that I encrypt it, right? So through that process now, it's been encrypted. No one else can see it unless they get the same key that now I'm going to share with Joel to be able to unencrypt it. So then the cipher data, it's encrypted, which is now that's what the data, the actual file is. It's cipher data is now transferred over to Joel. He takes the key that I sent him, he decrypts it, and now he's able to read it. So that's kind of the process of doing that in a very simple way of explaining it.
Yeah, and the picture was much prettier than mine, so thank you, Brandon.
Okay, let's tell everyone. When he first went through this, I was like, what are you explaining to me? I don't know if that's a cow head. Like, what's going on here?
Oh, epic fail. No, so I hope I explained it better to you guys last week than I did right before this. But cool. And Brandon, we jumped into a few of the weaknesses earlier, but do you want to go through these official weaknesses now?
Well, we were talking about like key distribution is a major problem, right? Parties must have a secure method of exchanging the secret keys before establishing communication with a symmetric key protocol. If the secure electronic channel is not available on an offline key distribution method, must be found, right, or must be used, right? And then, like you said, there's many ways of doing it offline, but you got to find a way to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you are going to use this means, right, this is really for one-to-one communications where you're going to set up the keys in advance, right? So if you have one server that's going to be communicating with the cloud backend, typically it'd be probably the same system administrator who's going to download the key from the cloud backend and put it onto that server. So then you would have those keys for encryption and decryption. So you may not even have to send those to somebody else, but if somebody else is servicing that server, you may have to encrypt it, the email, send it to them, and have them upload it on the server. So the next weakness is symmetric key cryptography does not implement non-repudiation, because any communicating party can encrypt and decrypt the messages, right? So Brandon, if you steal my key, you can decrypt the message.
Right.
There's no non-repudiation involved in that.
And clarify that, like, why is that important?
Well, so there's no way to prove where the given message originated.
Or who opened it and had access to it, right?
Exactly.
So, and that's the thing when you look at non-repudiation is like to be able to define of who had access to, who did work on it, what happened to that file, to that. If you can't say, Joel, I know Joel got it. Mm-hmm. Joel's the only one that opened it. If I can't prove that through this process, then there's non-repudiation. It's not reputable that I can't definitively say Joel is the only one that opened it. And that's where it really becomes, essential when you're looking at security of controlling data, controlling the access.
Yep.
When you're looking at using encryption.
Well, and that's huge when it comes to asymmetric, right? Because you're going to have a private key and you distribute the public keys. So you can tell who used what keys to then. Exactly.
Right.
We'll get into that here shortly, though.
Yep.
The next one is keys have to be regenerated often, right? So if a participant leaves the group and you don't want them to have access to future documents, you have to regenerate all those keys, distribute them again with only the participants you want included. So the scalability just doesn't work there.
Right. And you talked about keys must be regenerated often, right? So it's kind of the scalability on both sides. The algorithm is not scalable as well as the key itself, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the major strength of symmetric key cryptography, great speed at which it can operate. Symmetric key encryption is very fast, often 1,000 to 10,000 times faster than asymmetric algorithm.
Yep, absolutely. Now I'm going to skip ahead and show this real quick. So I thought this was interesting, but this is and it's down a little bit here, Brandon, but I'm going to fade this in. So we talk about not being able to scale very well. And Dr. Tony made a great point. You can use a trusted third party for non-repudiation, so it is possible. But let's talk about this scaling real quick. So you look here and the number of symmetric keys versus the number of asymmetric keys. And I got to scroll back down. Every time I fade in, it skips me to the top. All right, here we go. So when you don't have very many participants, it's not a big deal. And the scaling doesn't matter. Right? So look at that there. You have the number of participants, 2, 3, 4. The number of asymmetric keys is more than symmetric keys. But look what happens when you increase the number of participants as we get down there. Mm-hmm. So the number of symmetric keys is that one in the middle. So when you have 10,000 participants, what is that, 50 million? Generating that many keys is just not feasible. Whereas asymmetric, you would only need 20,000 keys. So hopefully that helps give you a good mental image of how it doesn't scale very well once you get up to 10,000 participants.
No, that's true. And you look at that and just the scalability and they'd be able to control those keys. Because again, we talked about that. If people lost the key, if you had to reset it and all that, it's just an administrative nightmare.
Totally. All right. Well, I think that leads us right into asymmetric really well, right?
Yep.
Let's jump right in. So these asymmetric key algorithms are known as public key algorithms, and they provide a solution to the weaknesses of the symmetric key algorithms. So in these systems, and I'm going to show the picture I had last week. Let me find it. Maybe I'm not. That's okay. We'll just use your shiny new one here in a moment. So right. in this system, each user is going to have two keys, a public key, which you share with everybody else, and a private key, which is kept secret, right? So a lot of you, maybe when you started a new job and they give you a laptop, they'll walk you through generating a private key, right? And then as you go throughout work, then you're just generating the public keys, which you're sending to others. Now there's a twist. Opposite and related keys must be used in tandem to encrypt and decrypt. In other words, if the public key encrypts a message, then only the corresponding private key can decrypt it and vice versa. So I was trying to explain this to Brandon at the beginning of this, and I was talking about how the private key was being used to decrypt it, right, as the receiver. He goes, wait a second, can't you do it either way? And I said, absolutely. But I still didn't explain it very well, did I?
And then that's when I grabbed this image just to kind of break it down. So we weren't using the goat image. We actually have a flow chart here.
So here's your image, ready, go.
So again, the same thing that you're talking about, like when you're actually having the sender or receiver, and you can see on kind of in the both ends of this image, right? When the sender has some sort of text that they can use the public key to encrypt it, which becomes cipher data, and then the private key is then used to decrypt it. And then you can do it, like you said, vice versa. You can go the other way, right? Through that kind of chain of events. Right? And you can use the private key to encrypt it and then get the public key to decrypt it.
That's it. But the key to this, get it? Key to this? Okay.
The key,
You're going to have one private key, lots of public keys, right? So you're going to generate more public keys than you will private keys. You just have... that's how many keys you'll have to generate. So,
right. And I think one point thing is to say is that, the public key the private key is the one that you want to protect and keep secure.
That's it. Right. Is your private keys compromised? Security, integrity, non-repudiate, all out the window.
Right.
Right. All right. We did have a question. He said, "Hey, what's in that mug?" I don't think I have a mug. Did you have a mug, Brandon? What's in that mug? That's a great question.
This is tea.
A little captain.
This is tea, and actually, what is it? It's I think it's chamomile tonight. Oh no, vanilla chai.
Vanilla chai. Now, hold on. I have to random piece of knowledge. Does anybody know how Jack Daniels died? Brandon, do you know how Jack Daniels died? Since I still think there's something extra in the cup more than chai tea, I'm going to tell you how Jack Daniels died. He had a safe that he forgot the combo to, so he kicked it. His toe got infected, and the blood poisoning from his toe ended up killing him. That will be on your CISSP exam, so if you do, you might have to watch this recording.
Long Island iced tea. No, it's not Long Island.
Long Island, yeah, exactly.
So I'll keep this quick. On the phones constantly, talking to clients, all that. I find that tea helps me to maintain my throat. So that's why even when you see me doing these live things, a lot of times I'm drinking tea, right? It's just to maintain the vocal cords so I can keep going. Because as you guys know, if you're talking over and over again all day, you start to get
Indeed. So I'm going to have to try tea because I don't know. I'm actually addicted to bubblies. These things are fantastic.
There you go.
You should see, though, I have like 25 boxes in the other room. My wife was like, I'm pretty sure you're like preparing for the apocalypse is different than other people's. Because I just had a car full of bubbly. Anyway.
No toilet paper, huh?
No toilet paper.
The essentials, toilet paper. Okay, so just a side note. Do you know what was the most purchased thing in shopping and grocery stores when the pandemic first hit? Top two things.
Toilet paper.
And what was the second?
Lettuce. I have no idea.
No, bags of chips. I had a colleague that does the actual supply chain inventory, all that for major stores. And he was saying it was funny. That was the one that was getting most plenished and they ran out of stock the fastest.
Wow.
Toilet paper and potato chips.
That's kind of funny. Oh, good stuff. I don't think I've eaten potato chips in months. I'm going to have to go get some Ruffles now. All right.
There you go.
Last thing I want to talk about on this is PKIs, right? So public key exchanges. Let's use DocuSign as an example. So hopefully you guys can see this. It's kind of small. But basically what it's doing is you have a signer, right? So anybody not familiar with DocuSign, it's a document you can get sent, you digitally sign it, and then they have the ability through asymmetric encryption to perform non-repudiation, saying this is the person that signed it, this is the document the way it was when they submitted it. So the way it works is the signer signs the data. They then use a hashing algorithm to take a hash of the document, right? So they can tell it's one of those keyless cryptography methods. Then they encrypt it with a private key, and that digitally signed document is then sent over to the verifier. Now what happens is you now have a hash algorithm and they have a public key for decryption. So when they decrypt it, they then will rehash it and verify that that hash matches the one when it left the signer. And that's how they know it's valid, when the hash values are equal. Yeah. How'd I do, Brandon?
You're good. That totally makes sense.
Cool.
And I would ask anyone, like, how many people here actually use DocuSign? And I know for myself, it's pretty frequent. I use it when in contracts and things like that I have to sign.
Yeah. Wouldn't you want to make sure their secretary didn't sign it, right?
Right. Exactly. Right.
I mean, it's easy, right? You're just typing a name in. So what's stopping them? Yeah. So do you want to go through a Bob example? I'm leaving that up to you if you want to do it.
Yeah. Let's ask everyone. Does everyone kind of get the PKI process and the way it goes through?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you get it, throw a thumbs up, and we'll kind of leave it at that and move on. We're already at 7:35, so we got a lot of content still. But if you get it, I saw some claps. But thumbs up me if you get it. Awesome, fantastic. Don is saying yes. So let's dig in and move forward. So let's talk about the strengths of asymmetric key cryptography. So almost guaranteed on this exam, they're going to ask you, they're going to give you a weakness or a strength, and they're going to say, which is it? Ready, go. So you got to know these. You got to be able to match them and pair them together. It says, Vivek says we always sign with our digital ID card in the DoD. Makes sense. The CAC card, yep. So you have to put the CAC card into the computer. It then signs it, and then that verifies the user's identity. So, Brandon, kick us off with strengths of asymmetric cryptography.
So the addition of new users requires the generation of only one public private key pair. This same key pair is used to communicate with all the users of the asymmetric crypto system. This makes the algorithm extremely scalable.
That's it. Next is users can be removed far more easily, right? It provides key revocation mechanism, so you can cancel a key. So if you sent something by mistake, and this is where, don't quote me on this, but I want to say Google lets you cancel emails. Have you seen that? They can actually revoke emails. I want to say they use something similar, but gosh, I'm gonna have to verify. I'm gonna have to double check that now.
Do you mean when sending?
Yeah. So when you send it, if you send it by accident, you can actually pull it back before they open it.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't know if that uses a PKI system, but
it might. And I know, I think you got like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, fairly quick.
Yeah, but you're basically revoking it. So similar idea if it's not the same system, but you basically revoke a key and you effectively remove the user from the system. Right.
No, true. And then key regeneration is required only when a user's private key is compromised. If a user leaves the community, the system administrator simply needs to re-invalidate the user's key. No other keys are compromised, and therefore key regeneration is not required for any other user.
Yeah. Now, here's the kicker. If you have one private key and you're a trusted third party that has a root CA and your private key is compromised, all those public keys, it's all compromised. Everything's compromised. You got to start from scratch. The next strength is asymmetric key encryption can provide integrity, authentication, and non-repudiation, right? So it's checking all three of those boxes. If a user doesn't share their private key with other individuals, a message signed by that user can be shown to be accurate from a specific source and cannot later be repudiated.
Which is awesome. I mean, again, when you're looking at security and all the stuff that we have to deal with, that's so essential right now, especially when you're securing data. I think data is a huge conversation that more and more people are having.
Huge conversation. Sean, welcome, Sean. I didn't even know you were in here quite yet, but he said Google can time bomb an email as well. Do you know what a time bomb is?
I'd love to hear what Sean.
I would too. I'm just so I can do it, to be honest. What are you doing? I'm time bombing emails.
Actually, you know what? I've actually seen that to talk about Sean. You can actually send a secure email and have it at a certain time. It will delete and it'll go. So like if you're sending contracts or anything along that line, Seriously? It'll be only be available for like 5 to 7 days or whatever the time frames are. So correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, if that's what you're talking about. I actually have seen that.
That is
it's
really cool.
In the bottom there. So when you're sending, you can send a secure email and they only have it for a certain amount of time.
I'm going to do that to my wife. She's going to hate me. Babe, you didn't get it? I sent it to you. If you didn't open it right away, it's on you. Sorry. I sent it.
Do it. Send her something. This is important. You need to read this. Yep. And she'll be like, oh my God, it's gone. Where'd it go? Oh, I don't know.
That's right. I think this point that you're up on next is important though, Brandon, because Vivek asked about it earlier. How are you distributing the keys, right?
So Key distribution is a simple process. Users who want to participate in the system's supply make their public key available to anyone with whom they want to communicate. There is no method by which the private key can be derived from the public key. So, which is essential that you can't build the private key from the public key. That's what they're basically saying, right?
That's it. Yep. And then no pre-existing communication link needs to exist, right? So two individuals can begin communicating securely from the moment they start communicating. So similar to PKI, right? As soon as that first communication is sent, then you can encrypt everything else in between those two users. Similar to Gmail. So the first email you send, there's something with the keys you set up there, but the first email you send, I don't believe is encrypted, but then after there's communications both ways, everything else is encrypted between users. That's different from PKI though. I'll pull that up next episode too.
Oh, it's good.
Yep. Go ahead, Brandon.
So the major weakness of public key cryptography is its slow speed of operation. For this reason, many applications that require the secure transmission of large amounts of data use public key cryptography to establish a connection and then exchange a symmetric secret key.
Yep. So imagine this, right? I have a private key. I'm going to give you a public key. Then we start encrypted communications that take a little while, but then I'll share with you that symmetric key, and we'll use that moving forward. Similar to the example where you have you're using your own key store in a cloud environment, you'll pull down that key and put it on a server. You're doing that symmetric key encryption because it's quick, right? So if you're doing streaming data, you need that tunnel ready to rock, and you just have those same keys on both servers, and they can communicate quickly together.
Yeah, which totally makes sense. I mean, when you look at the bandwidth and the time.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so this next table, I didn't take a screenshot of it, Brandon, because that's everything we just covered. So let's move forward. Unless we have any questions. It looks like Sean agreed with you, so that's exactly what a time bomb was. You set it to expire, and then poof, it's gone. And Vivek, I guess he didn't know either, so cool. Hey, but seriously, thank you guys for hanging out with us. I'm having a blast today. I appreciate you guys participating, as always.
For sure, yeah, and we always learn from you guys as well.
Absolutely. All right. We're on symmetric cryptography. Okay, no, we're not. We already covered that. But what it's saying is we learned, okay, I'm back at it. We learned the basic concepts underlying it now, right? We touched on it last week. We touched on this week. We're going to take an in-depth look at several common symmetric crypto systems, primarily DES and triple DES. And then we'll talk about AES as well. So let's jump in.
So data encryption standard, DES. The U.S. government published the data encryption standard in 1977 as a proposed standard crypto system for all government communications. Because of the flaws in the algorithm, cryptographers and the federal government no longer consider DES secure.
Right. So the reason they don't consider it secure is because intelligence agencies were routinely decrypting the information, right? So then DES was superseded by the AES, or Advanced Encryption Standard, in December of 2001. I didn't realize it'd been around that long.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I did want to throw this up because I'm very much, I learned through pictures, but I want to show you guys the weaknesses of DES. So the DES weaknesses. So DES stands for, once again, Data Encryption Standard. Mm-hmm. Now we're on the Advanced Encryption Standard. So just remember that. AES, Advanced Encryption Standard. We're coming from DES, which is Data Encryption Standard. The key size is too small. So several weaknesses have been found. They believe the most serious is the key size is only 56 bits. So checking basically those keys on a brute force attack, with the available technology, it said one processor will take 2,000 years. Now, before the session, I did a little digging. I'm like, okay, one processor. What would my server do it in? And here's what I got. Let me see what I can get for you. Here we go. So the answer was basically an attacker would be able to test this many keys per second, and you guys will see this on your screen here shortly. But in the worst case, the last tested key in the solution, what you need is about 2 hours. So if you're going to test every single key in DES, it'll take you 2 hours.
Wow.
Now, in the best case, you could guess it with the first key right out of the gate. It'll take you 1 second. But on average, you're going to go through about half the keys. This means you'll be able to crack DES in about an hour, strictly based on the key size. What do you think,
Wow.
Brandon?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, I was actually talking to someone today about the quantum computers. Now they're talking about 2021 that they might be in the public, that people can buy them. Like the actual user now can buy quantum computers.
I don't think we're that close. Now, what you guys may have heard is that quantum computers are going to break all encryption. And it's true, right? As soon as quantum computers are publicly available, basically to end users, the encryption mechanisms we use now are going to be able to be cracked, similar to DES, but we just have that much more processing power, which is why they're coming up with what's called QKD. And this isn't in the text, guys. CISSP is a few years behind, but QKD is quantum key distribution. And this is basically the quantum cryptography. So that's a whole nother talk for a whole nother day. But that is on the horizon, if what you say is true, Brandon.
Well, yeah, and it was a passing conversation, but I mean, as we know with technology and the evolution of it, if that's possible in the next year, it'll be interesting to see. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's going to be extremely expensive, and not every home user is going to be able to buy it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're talking about the possibility of the, I think it was Q4 of next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think IBM's got a commercial model, right? So like, it's still going to be. It's
D-Wave, like there's a few companies that have it, right?
Yeah, Google has one. So if you guys haven't yet, type in Google quantum computer and check it out. Tell me if you want to install one of those bad boys in your house, because one of the keys to quantum computing, and I know we're derailing here, but you have to keep the temperatures like wicked cold. So that's one of the limitations. Is you got to have like a sub-zero freezer for a basement. And we got a few comments here. Yes, tech evolves, and so does security. You're exactly right. Continuous improvement everywhere, keeping us all employed forever. Yeah, we are all gainfully employed for the foreseeable future. So well done choosing this profession. Also, did you guys hear that a supercomputer was being used to mine crypto not that long ago? So I'm just saying, but the security on these things probably isn't too far past where other computers are today. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of these bad boys being used maliciously someday in the near future.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. We digress. Back to DES and triple DES. So it's important to understand DES because it's really the building blocks of triple DES, right? And this is a stronger encryption algorithm discussed in this section. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Now, did you want to jump over to triple DES?
No, let's jump into,
let's finish off DES.
Yeah, let's finish off DES.
So I know we're here. DES is a 64-bit block cipher that we already talked about that has 5 modes of operations: electronic code book, ECB mode, cipher block chaining, CBC mode, and then cipher feedback mode, CFB, output feedback, OFB mode, and then counter, CRT mode. These modes are explained in the following section. All of the DES modes operate on a 64-bit of plain text at a time to generate 64-bit blocks of cipher text. The keys used by DES is a 56-bit bit long. Now, I think it's very important to understand the different modes because that's going to build up the foundation for triple DES.
Yeah, and we're going to go into some of those different modes here later in the session. Now, DES uses a long series of XOR operations to generate ciphertext. So I pulled up, this graphic stinks, so I'm sorry, but I wanted to show this to you guys. So this is the XOR, what it does. All it's doing is it's basically taking and adding them together. So basically when you have an odd number, the output is 1, and when you have an even number, the output is 0. So when you're going 0 plus 0, it's 0. When you go 0 plus 1, it's going to be odd, so it's 1. So that is exclusive OR, also known as XOR. So when you XOR something, you're basically just changing the bits from zeros and ones to zeros and ones in a different fashion. So that is exclusive OR. So what we're doing is we're taking that operation and we're generating ciphertext with that operation. And then we repeat it 16 times for each encryption and decryption process. Each of these repetitions is commonly referred to as a round of encryption, and that explains the statement that DES performs 16 rounds of encryption. Vivek said like detector. You'll have to. It was an old way to remember that. You'll have to elaborate a little more, Vivek. Not quite sure where you're going with that one, but happy to dig into it. Yeah. Now, do you want me to hit that real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So some of the documentation you may read that instead of a 56-bit, that DES uses a 64-bit key. It's not an consistency. It's actually pretty logical. The DES specification calls for a 64-bit key, but actually only 56 bits of those contain a key. So while it takes up all of those, 8 bits are just parity information to ensure the other 56 bits or the key itself is accurate. Those bits are very rarely used. So basically it's buffer. But you should basically commit the 56-bit figure to memory. So Brandon, how many bits does DES key have in it?
Well, 56, right? That's what we have to remember.
Somebody's passing this exam.
Or I can just listen real well.
That's right. All right, you ready for triple DES?
Yeah, let's go into it.
All right, are you guys ready for triple DES? Any questions? Okay, if 2 bits are the same, then the output is 0. Boom, that's it. Well, until we get to quantum... No, you're right. If 2 bits are the same, then it equals 0. You're 100% right, Vivek. And if they're not the same, then it's going to equal 1, and that's Zor. I'm still curious how like detector got into this. You're going to have to explain yourself on that one. All right, let's jump into triple DES. So if you can imagine, if we have DES, guess what we're going to do with triple DES?
Any takers?
Any takers? Well, okay. What happened to double DES? Does anybody know? Do you know, Brandon?
Yeah, I haven't heard much about double DES.
Yeah, and you won't, because basically, I pulled up this real quick. Okay. They basically tried double DES, and they realized they had the same flaw DES did. But then if you take it a step further into triple DES, it makes it that much more secure. So basically, yeah, so you can see here, as the computing power has increased, it may not be that. Yeah, so basically double DES, what you can see to encrypt, you're seeing, let's take one of those examples. You're seeing E, and then in the brackets K2. The Ks are going to be a key, and then the P is going to be the plain text. So if you go into the innermost bracket, you're going to see the plain text is multiplied times a key, and then you're going to have that encrypted text, and you're going to multiply that times a key, and then you're going to have, that will be encrypted text, right? And that will turn into ciphertext. So basically, they're using 2 keys to encrypt the data. Now, when you get down to triple DES, hold on, I have this blown up a little bit. Let me get this for you guys. Where is it? Haha, I knew I had it somewhere. All right, so with 3 keys, when you use 3 keys in triple DES, it uses 168 bits and is more robust, but it's also slow. Triple DES has been adopted for internet applications like PGP, SMIME, which is what they use for emails, and note, triple DES can be run with 2 keys, such as K1 equals K3. Okay, yep, so we'll get into that here shortly. But here is basically your triple DES equation. Now, where you see K1, you could put K1 where K3 is as well. So there's actually 5 variations of triple DES, which you're going to need to know. You don't have to know all of them, but basically you can use you have to use at least 2 keys, but you can use one of the keys in 2 places. And then one of the forms, they actually include a decryption function in there as well. Whew. That was a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover. No, does everyone get that?
And I think we got this other picture, which is going to help here in a minute, but let's see what they say real quick. Yep, so exactly, Don, 3 by 56 makes it much more difficult to brute force. It just takes time.
Right.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and throw up this picture of this. Here is what it looks like when you're encrypting and decrypting. So the plain text is the P on top. So you have the P 64-bit plain text. That's going to go into a DES cipher encrypted by key 1. Then that's going to come down further, and you're going to use key 2 for a DES reverse cipher down to another DES cipher for key 3, and then you'll have your ciphertext there. So that is triple DES, and then you will reverse that for your decryption mechanism. Woohoo! I'm throwing some claps in the chat.
There you go.
All right, did we explain that well, guys? Any questions on this? Is this confusing? Can we go back? Can we clarify, answer any questions? You got to know DES and triple DES on this what it's used for. Remember, triple DES is going to be used for PGP, going to be used for SMIME. SMIME is huge. Everybody's using it for email encryption these days. How'd I do, Brandon?
I think good. I think it's explained, well, at least, let's see what everyone thinks about the DES and triple DES.
Cool.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So when would you use it?
I use it all the time.
Triple DES?
That's a good question. So I use SMIME for Gmail.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if that uses triple DES. I wonder if there's other encryption algorithms you could use instead of triple DES that Google's using. You know what? This is worth finding out. So, does Gmail use triple DES for SMIME? Let's find out.
And then why don't we just kind of wait to see how everyone's doing with this?
They support triple DES, SHA-1, and MD5 SMIME.
There we go.
So in legacy stuff. So they support it. But what is the newest version? Let's see what we got. Here we go. That's where I want to be. All right. Yep. So they use TLS, right? So front end using TLS, Google Cloud customers with additional requirements for encryption of data over WAN can choose to implement further protections for data as it moves from user to an app or virtual machine to virtual machine. These protections include IPsec tunnels, Gmail, SMIME, managed SSL certificates, and Istio. Very cool stuff. Still doesn't say if it's using triple DES. It says it supports it though. So
right.
We'll move on.
I'm sure it depends on the application.
Yeah, it does. 4 minutes left, Brandon. This was a lot of content. How are you feeling?
I think one of the things that I want to hit home, and I think you're saying is you got to know this.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Because there's going to be questions on it where they're going to ask you how it works. There's going to be a scenario and you have to understand how the encryption works.
Now, one thing, man, we missed. So here are the things we didn't touch on in today's session that we have 4 minutes left. And I don't have pictures for it though. Right. So I have one picture and I think I can explain it well without digging too deep. But these are basically the modes that build onto this. So you have output feedback mode, you have cipher feedback mode, cipher blockchaining mode. And all of these are using, whether it's XOR or using a IV, what is it called? A seed. Right, so they'll use a seed to further the encryption and chain that. So each block, they're basically of unencrypted text. They XOR it with the block of ciphertext, and then immediately preceding it, before it's encrypted using the DES algorithm, the decryption process simply decrypts the ciphertext, reverses the XOR algorithm. So let me show you real quick what that looks like. So here's a quick graphic, and Lord, I hope I can explain this as well as the guy who taught me. But basically, you have your key is your block cipher, right? So this is the decryption of it. So you have your plain text. You have your ciphertext at the top. It goes into the block cipher decryption. You have your initialization vector, and then you have your plain text. You know what, guys? I'm going to have to read up on this and come back to be able to explain this better. Is that fair, Brandon?
That's fair.
The picture's just too small for me to really walk through this, and I'm looking at it on LinkedIn, and I can barely read it as is. So what I'm going to do is we'll dig into those, and we'll kick off next session with a set of quiz questions around those and a deep dive on each of those. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah, and then we'll start with the kind of the different modes.
Yeah.
Right, and then the explanation of it. I think that's good. Yeah, because I think that's, again, these are all things that we're learning as we're going through this as well. And we want to make sure that we cover it correctly.
Now, do you guys, when I learned it, it was in a advanced web application pen testing course. Do you guys want me to bring in a little more content around how those could be compromised? Or do you, once again, it's not going to be on the exam. So is that something you guys want to learn about, or just digging in and learning these specific modes? What do you guys think? I'd love to hear it in the chat. We got to wrap up here in a minute, but it looks like we got some claps and thumbs up. So maybe I will bring some of that content. How you feeling, Brandon? Did we catch you up from last session? Get you through the content today?
Good. Yeah, it was good. And then Vivek said, I like it. Perfect stopping point. I think this is very technical information. And if you're not in it, you're not using it every day, you don't have some background in history, I think it's a lot to cover in one session. And then we might have to recap it and review it a little bit later too, just to make sure as we go through this that people have this down. Because it's kind of funny because you're going in my opinion of when you look at the CISSP, we went through a lot of administration kind of, policies, procedures, governance, and that. And now you're looking at math, cryptography and all that. And now you're kind of getting that, logical brain going, trying to figure out how the formulas work and all that. So yeah, I think it's good. It's good to know. It's good to kind of understand for the test, but you got to make sure that you study this.
Yeah. So real world stuff, sure. You guys have seen me just through this session. I get sidetracked pretty easily, but I'll try to keep it related to what we're talking about. And we'll keep it very specific. So guys,
hold on a second. Look at Vivek. So he's literally about to pour his Long Island iced tea in his hotel room.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Guys, and I'm not going to see you before Thanksgiving. So guys, happy Thanksgiving and holidays. Get off the devices. Spend some time with family. We will be here for you next Tuesday.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Have a blessed week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here today. We wish you all the best.